We're showing you savings that if you were priced at the lowest possible amount, this is the cost savings that you would achieve, oh, by the way, with your current provider.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Raving Patients podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tau, and today we're going to talk about how to save you money on your credit card processing fees. I'm talking to Matt Rej from Merchant Cost Consulting. Before we get into the podcast, I just want to thank the sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the Doc Sites, for their support, and remind everybody about my event in September of 2023, September 29th and 30th to be exact. It's called Supercharge Your Dental Practice, and it's in the Opal Grand Resort. To find out more, go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com to learn more about the 17 speakers and 14 hours of CE that you can earn. I hope to see you there. Let's talk to Matt about Merchant Cost Consulting. Matt has been working in the financial world for over 10 years, and after quickly learning the world of payments for the past 7 years, Matt has been exposing the industry for what it truly is. Matt oversees the sales team for MCC, developing new employees and educating enterprise to brick and mortar customers on how they can reduce and optimize their costs within the payments world. Matt, welcome to the Raving Patients podcast.
Len, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
So to be very transparent, I met Matt last week in Phoenix at the Women in Orthodontics event. I was a speaker and a vendor there. He was a vendor. And we connected, and I was intrigued in what he had to offer. I wish when I was a practicing owner that I learned more about his services, because I knew that I would definitely be able to save money on my credit card fees. And I really wanted to bring what his company does to my audience, because I think by the time this ends, you will really feel that you need to reach out to learn more about what they can do. So that's a really good segue into what I want to ask you. To begin with, Matt, what do you do and how did you get started in the industry?
So Merchant Cost Consulting is a cost reduction service. And our main focus is to help businesses reduce, eliminate, negotiate their credit card merchant fee expenses without changing your current provider, software, bank integration that you have, right? So everything stays the exact same. We leverage our data, analytics, and knowledge to help reduce the fees that you all pay. And our model is a contingency-based model where we take a percentage of the achieved savings that we achieve your practice. That's it. It's no additional costs. I compare it very similarly to like a contingency lawyer, right? They win the case for you. They collect damages for you. They take a percentage of those damages. Same thing for MCC, but we're focused on helping you guys reduce the merchant fees. The other aspect of our service is we help you then audit your account monthly to ensure those fees we reduce for you actually stay reduced, right? A big black eye in the industry, which we'll get into, is like rate increases, PCI compliance, hidden or padded surcharges. Things pop up all the time. Our job is not only to help you lower the fees, it's to keep them there by auditing your account monthly, right? That's what we do in a nutshell. And really how I got started was I was working at a credit card processing company in Boston, right? And full disclaimer, like, this is not something you go to school for, right? You don't go to college, you get a degree in credit card processing. It's just a job that you kind of fall into. I had a friend of mine who actually works with us now, working at that company as a sales professional. And he's like, hey, I think it's a good job. Went, interviewed, got the job. And then that's where I learned payments, right? The payment industry, how it's set up is the higher they set the rates on you, the more money you make, right? So it's not aligning with you, the business owner. Your job as the business owner is, hey, I want to save as much money as I can. The issue is that when we were doing this, rates were increasing all the time. So we were told one thing, we'd have customers call us and say, hey, 6 months ago, you told me this, but now my pricing's X. This doesn't add up. And that put a bad taste in our mouth because we didn't have control of that, right? The parent company did. And all credit card processing companies do this. So we're like, hey, there's a better way to do this. And that's really where the inception of MCC came about, where it's like, we can leverage the knowledge of payments to help businesses lower the fees, negotiate them, etc., without that whole headache of having to make a change. And that's where we are today. So
throughout my 15 years of practice ownership, you don't know how many times I got a call or met somebody who said they can beat the fees that I was being paid or that I was being charged. And they said they could, but it was a rigmarole about changing services. So I basically stayed with the same provider for most of my career. And I would definitely have used the service that you provide. So let's talk about, I think the most important thing is can you set up for somebody in their mind what the payment industry looks like? Because there are multiple players. You know, there's the first data, you've got the credit card companies. So can you lay out like a little map of how the industry works?
We'll start very high level, right? There's so many different players involved, and depending the industry that you're in, et cetera. But let's just stick with dental for all intents and purposes, right? So you have what's called an acquirer, also known as like a major payment processing company. So you name some of them. First Data, also known as Fiserv, Global Payments, WorldPay, also known as FIS, Elavon, the list goes on, right? And in short, how this works is you have the major payment processing company. You can then have a dealer, or also known as an ISO, an independent sales office, that essentially just resells different acquirers, right? Whoever's going to give them the best deal or have better product or service, they'll resell it, right? So those are individual companies. Then you have the software companies. So for, you dental practices out there who use Open Dental, Dentrix, etc., you have those guys. And then you have the banks, right? So high level, if I'm a dental practice, how it would work is if I'm using Global Payments, for example, Global Payments is the parent company, the processing company. Then I may have Open Dental as my practice management software. How it works is that Open Dental is the software that my practice uses every day to, check patients in, take their payments, etc. Open Dental partners with a major processing company, sometimes 2, 3, or 4, right? And you can decide who you want to use. And how it works is when you come in and when you have a patient that you take their credit card information, you put it through Open Dental, Dentrix, etc. That processes the transaction, but the processor is actually Global Payments. We'll just keep that example fluid. And Global is the one that's actually running the transactions, allowing, from the networks, from the credit card information to pass to the bank, to pass to your customer's bank account, etc. They are doing that. Think of highways, right? Where credit card information is being processed. Global Payments is monitoring those highways, allowing it to go back and forth from your practice management software, and then having the money deposited into your bank account, and having the funds taken from your patient's bank account, etc. Right? So that's very high level how I can describe it for you. And in essence, everyone's taking a cut of the transactions that's processed. So you run $100 down payment, right? Or copay, for example, for a patient. Of that $100, let's just say 3% of fees are being taken out. Of the 3% of fees, which in this case is $3, all those companies we just mentioned are taking their fees, right? You also include Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. They take their fees. Global Payments, the processing company, they take their fees. The practice management software, they're taking their fees, all out of that small sliver of the cost. But if you break it up, and you understand how that works, it's pretty eye-opening. I know $3 doesn't sound like a lot, but if your practice is doing $100,000 a month in sales, it adds up, right? And think of how many practices there are out in the world. So, that's very high level, not to get too much into the weeds of how it works, some of the players and what it means for your practice.
Got it. And that's what I was looking to have you do, is just give us a high level overview of what the industry looks like, because it is a very confusing industry. And like I said, we get calls all the time in the practice saying, and we meet people that says, hey, we can lower your fees. We can save you money. You just have to switch to us. Like I said, the biggest advantage that you guys offer is you don't have to make any switch. So let's talk about another topic, which is the fees that you get charged. There are so many different fees. As you know, we had a conversation. I'm hosting this meeting, so I have another LLC I formed to do this. And so I set up a payment processing on this with WorldPay. And looking at the credit card statement, I was like absolutely blown away by all the fees I was being charged. So I switched on my own to another processing company. But talk about all the fees that you have to watch out for, because obviously the fees add up over time, and you're paying a lot of money in fees to these processing companies.
Yeah, so the bulk of the fees that you pay, they're called interchange fees, right? And essentially the easiest way to describe it is if you go into your wallet today, you take out a credit card or a debit card that you use, right? That card has a rate associated to it, right? That's called an interchange fee. They are non-negotiable. The rate is what the rate is. So if you pull out your rewards credit card, that rate might have a rate of 2% for the example of this, right? That is probably the majority of the fees that you pay every month for your practice, right? All those different fees, Amex, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, there's so many, there's over 700 interchange fees, right? What happens is those fees are passed along to the processing company, which is Global Payments, just using that as an example. That fee is then passed on to your business, right? And then what happens is that Global Payments, the processor, this is the one that's actually monitoring the fees on the highways again, they put in a markup. And how that markup is calculated is very confusing because there's so many different pricing structures involved. Only a few of them are really competitive for your business. So in short, while the majority of the fees are not negotiable, a lot of the fees that are super confusing to understand. You have monthly costs, you have PCI fees, you have percentage fees per transaction fees, you have things called downgrades, surcharges. There's so much stuff involved, right? And that's a lot of the stuff that we're looking at. So like our main focus is to help you reduce the excess stuff, the excess fat, the garbage that really you shouldn't be being charged for your practice. Leaving the interchange fees alone, right? But there's a laundry list of stuff that we take a look at to help basically lower the fees, right? That you're paying. That is the short answer to some of the different costs that you're going to see. And the thing that's so deceptive is that they vary by processing company. So what one fee may be called for WorldPay is not the same fee when you're talking to Global Payments. And that is why it's not transparent, right? Because everything's different. You get that merchant statement every month and it has that laundry list of fees that you're looking at. But because each processing company has their own way of describing what each fee is, super confusing and hard to distinguish. Well, what fee is negotiable, or what is this fee? What purpose does this fee even serve? Right? People don't even understand that. So that's one thing that makes it difficult to understand and why companies like us exist.
That's good. So again, you can do whatever level you want. You don't have to go so high level here. But what are some ways that you can lower the fees, or a practice can lower their fees? Whether it's through you or whether it's through their own reach out. Obviously, the purpose that you're going to do, the biggest advantage you do is you do it without having them to switch, but you also monitor future statements is to check to make sure there's no other credit card increases. So what are some ways that a practice can lower their fees?
The longer but thorough way to do this is literally get your credit card processing company on the phone and go through each fee with them, right? I know it's super tedious, and you as a doctor, you have 1,000 other things you have to do, right? Especially if you own your own business. And this is one little area of expense that really gets pushed off to the wayside. But if you let it go too long, it's a massive expense that you could probably save tens and thousands of dollars on if you just pay attention to it. And I would say every quarter, call your processing company, go through it with them. Hey, what is this fee? Hey, what is that fee, right? Now, there's one issue with doing that, and that is that employees that you're talking to when speaking with the processing companies, they are trained to retain your account, meaning they don't want to give the full description of what each fee necessarily is, because you start going down a rabbit hole of, oh, well, you never told me this when we signed up with the contract. Oh, well, when does this fee apply to us, right? And it's not that they're uneducated, but just a lot of the times they're not being told how to correctly explain to people what each fee means. And sometimes, I hate to say it, but they're incorrect when they're explaining what each fee is because they just don't know any better, right? It's not their fault. But that is the easiest way to do it. Go through your statement and look at each specific fee and say, why am I being charged this and what does it mean, right? And a lot of times they may give you a runaround answer, but it is a direct way to look at that. The second thing to do is shop around like everyone else does, right? Go to 5 different credit card processing companies and see what they have to offer. There's 2 issues with that as well. One being specifically in dental, if you do have a practice management software that integrates with said processor, your hands are kind of tied of who you can choose. So if there's maybe 2 to 3 options, that's great. You can go to each processing company and get a quote from them, right? Compare them and go with the provider that maybe gives you the lowest overall cost. That's one way of doing it. If you don't use a software integration and you're free to choose any processing company that you want to use, you can shop around. The issue with that is that if you currently have poor pricing, right, and you go to company XYZ and say, hey, I'm looking for a new credit card processing company. I want to save money. They're going to look at your current statement or look at your current fees, and they're going to offer you pricing that may give you some savings, but it's almost like throwing you a bone, right? Like, yeah, sure, here's $100 a month in savings, but oh, by the way, they're not going to tell you if you were priced poorly, you may be leaving $1,000 a month in savings on the table. But why would they tell you that, right? Because their goal is the higher they set the rate, the more money goes into their pocket. They're not aligning with your business, right? So if you have poor pricing, it may save you money, but they still might give you poor pricing. And you're basically running in circles, right? That's the second thing that you can do to try to get better rates, right? Is simply talk to a bunch of different providers. Just you have to understand how it works. That's the biggest issue with it. It's difficult. Like we could do a whole other podcast of each fee that you're supposed to be looking at, right? Of how does this work, etc. The one thing I would say is if you take the I'm going to shop around approach, make sure you get the full contract and the full pricing schedule that the credit card processing company is offering. It's one thing to just get, a lot of these processors will give you a rate comparison, right? Where it's a high level Excel sheet. It compares maybe 5 or 6 of the fees that you're being charged now and what they can offer you on those same 5 to 6 fees. But they are not listing out monthly minimums. They are not listing out chargeback fees. They're not listing out AVS costs, batch fees. Like the list goes on of all this stuff that you will be charged in your account, right? Really high level. They're just looking at maybe your per transaction fee and the percentage rate that you pay, which is a big brunt of it. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the full picture. And a lot of people don't understand that, right? The other thing too is even if you get good pricing, so let's just say that you take the shop around approach. I'm going to go to 5 different companies and get quotes from them. Even if you pick one that you think has good pricing, and let's just go with the example that maybe it is really good pricing. 6 months down the road does not mean that you're going to have that same rate. It's very similar to, the telecom industry, right? We live up here in the Northeast in Massachusetts. It's Verizon or Comcast, right? And you sign up for cable, you think you get one rate, 6 months goes by, now you're getting charged another $100 a month. And there's all these line item fees that you see in your monthly statement. It's the same thing with credit card processing, except it's magnified probably 10x, right? And that's the issue, is you look at your statement 6 months down the road, all these fees have popped up, and you have no idea how to read this statement because why would you? It's like reading a different language. It's not the language you speak. And that is also a big issue with even if you do negotiate good pricing and you go through with a rep of each fee or you do shop it around, that doesn't mean they're going to stay there, right? And that is another big reason why we exist, is helping clients understand each fee, but then also keeping those rates there that you may have negotiated on your own or you leverage us to do so.
I think the moral of the story is that it takes a long time. You have to know the industry. And if you can spend hours doing it just to save a few dollars, it may not be worth the time that it takes. And I think that's a big thing to take from this. So obviously there's advantages to using a service like yours. So why don't we talk about what service you provide and how you work? Let's go to that step at this point.
Yeah. So, if you're a do-it-yourself person, great. You know what I mean? If you want to go and work in your yard and do it yourself, that's great. For us, it's for the people that don't want to do it yourself. You want to just have someone with an expert opinion look at it and give you an unbiased look, because ultimately we don't care who you process payments with, right? And what we typically do is we do audits, right? And all credit card processing companies will say the same thing. Send me over a couple months of statements. We'll take a look at it and see what we can do. The difference between us doing that and a credit card processing company is we're showing you savings that if you were priced at the lowest possible amount, this is the cost savings that you would achieve. Oh, by the way, with your current provider. The difference with a credit card processing company doing that same analysis is they're saying, hey, Len, if you switched, here's how much we're going to save you. But you do have to switch, and that is not bottom of the barrel pricing. That is just their rate that they're willing to offer, right? So it's the same that you might hear, like, hey, send over a couple statements, we'll do the audit or analysis. We do the same thing, but we're showing you what the true ultimate savings could absolutely be on your account. And that's the easiest way to do it, because then we can decipher the interchange fees versus the service markup, see if it even is worth your time, right? Because listen, if we're only going to save you $100 a month for your dental practice, more or less, you probably have really good pricing, and it doesn't make sense to engage with us now. But if 6 months go by and you look at the same statement, you're like, Matt, this is out of control. We want you to relook at the audit and do another audit. We absolutely can do that, right? But we're doing it as well because we don't want to waste your time. As a doctor, you have 1,000 things going on. We want to see if the savings are worth it for you, worth it for us, etc. But that's the first step, right? It's getting an audit done, seeing what we can do. And if it makes sense, great. And if it doesn't, you don't owe us a penny and there's no cost for these audits or anything like that.
So I wanted to ask you another question, and it's not on our list of topics we were going to discuss, but I know we briefly discussed it, and it's a very big topic of conversation within the dental industry now. So I want your opinion of it because it's in your space. What do you feel about businesses, or what are your suggestions for businesses that want to pass off the credit card fees to the patient?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We get it all the time. And this one is not black and white. So let's just really dive in. So the first thing is, if you're a practice and you want to pass the fee on to your patient, right, you have to think of a lot of different things. One, how is your patient going to react? This is like another tax for them, right? In today's current economic environment, people are pissed off enough as far as like, oh, you're raising your rates on me, then to get another fee. I don't know how they would. So that's up to your discretion as the doctor, right? Some people don't care. Some people are like, what the heck? Then you have to understand the rules of doing that, right? In some states, you are not allowed to surcharge the customer, right? So there's two things I want you to think of this is there's one thing called the cash discount program in credit card processing. And then there's something called the surcharging program in credit card processing. Both very similar at a high level. Both programs pass the fees on to the customer, but both are also very different when it comes to legality and how it works, right? So cash discount, super high level, is if you're a business that typically accepts cash in a transaction for your rendered services or product, you can offer a discount to your patients or customer if they pay in cash. If they opt not to pay in cash, then you can then pass a fee along to the customer. The max is 4% that you can pass on, and you can only do it for credit card transactions. So you can't do it for debit transactions. There's a caveat to that, right? The surcharge program, which is different, and by the way, there's more caveats to the cash discount program, but those are the main ones, right, to understand. The surcharge program, you have to go to your state legislature, see if you're allowed to pass the fees along to your patients. Like in Massachusetts, you are not allowed to do that. There's only like 3 or 4 states that you are not allowed to. I think it's Massachusetts, Connecticut, Kansas, maybe Colorado. They may have switched it, but either way, you can find this stuff online. Don't quote me on that. And you have to register your business with Visa, MasterCard, and their surcharge program so that they know you are doing this. And there's all this signage, etc., that you have to post in your business, letting people know that you are passing the fee along, right? And it just takes one bad apple, or I shouldn't even say a bad apple. It just takes one patient to walk into your practice, you're trying to surcharge them or charge them the fee, and they're like, you're doing this incorrectly. And they go to, district attorney, attorney general, whatever, and just expose you that you're doing it wrong. And then that's just a whirlwind of legal troubles that you don't want to have to deal with, big or small, right? It's just another thing in your plate. So there's that part, right? Then there's the part, if you're a practice that has an integrated software, right? Let's just say you're using Dentrix or Open Dental, for example, and you're integrated with a specific credit card processing company. You can't just go and say, I'm going to pass the fees along, because then the integration's not going to work, right? That's a big flaw. And a lot of practices, if Linda is in the office and she does things the way she's been doing them, and you want to try to pass the fees along, well, she has to then go manually enter these transactions into your software. You have to do like your own, quality control, if you will, of are the transactions going through properly, etc. It's just another step. And that is a big reason why, dental practices don't do this now. Just because why would I want to make my life more difficult, right? And unfortunately, you were at the mercy of the customer because everyone wants their points, right? Everyone wants their frequent flyer miles. Everyone wants their rewards programs, their cash back. You, the business, are paying for that. And I know you want to pass it on to your customer, but a big thing in Congress right now is, them fighting with Visa, MasterCard of all these rewards programs. Someone has to pay for it. And it's essentially going to be the business, not the consumer. And that is the long-winded answer to your question about why don't I just pass the fees along, right? There's a lot more to it. And the issue is many reps, sales reps in credit card processing who do try to sell this to you, you need to make sure that they're selling it to you the correct way. A lot of them are doing it because they make a ton of money. You pass 4% on to your patient, right? First Data, for example, is still going to get their money. They're going to take 3.5%, and maybe they'll give 0.5% to the sales rep who set you up with that program. But they actually make more money doing it that way. They would prefer you to do it in some instances that way. But the reason it's not a big thing is because of all the legality involved and the rules, etc. So that's the answer.
I personally believe, and I'm pretty vocal about this. I personally believe it's very nitpicky when you're talking about, if you can, afford 3%, 3.5%, as a cost of doing business, then you shouldn't be taking credit cards in the first place. So that's just my personal opinion. I would never use it, but there is a big controversy. You go into the bagel store, they say, they're charging you 4% unless you pay cash. So it's very common nowadays, but I appreciate your being straightforward with us there. I want to switch over now to our Q&A. For those that have not listened before, I'm just going to ask Matt some questions. He's going to answer them very quickly. They're usually business related. So Matt, first question here. When you were a kid, what was the first thing you wanted to be when you grew up?
MLB baseball player.
I knew that. When in our conversation, I had a feeling you were going to say that.
I actually have a piece of paper that I wrote down in the 4th grade. What do you want to be when you grow up? And that's what it was. But yeah, short answer.
Okay. How do you develop key partnerships?
Finding partners in industries that align with where we feel we can make the most difference or bring the most value, I would say, right? So dental, healthcare, that's why we're here.
What is one subscription you can't live without?
Gym. We'll just go gym membership.
How do you plan on continuing to grow your business?
Talk to as many Len Taus as we can.
All right. Now, this is probably one of the most difficult questions, and very frequently do I not get an answer to this, so we'll see what you have to say. If you had to open up a lemonade stand tomorrow, what would you call your lemonade stand?
Matt's Lemonade. There's nothing fancy about it. If it's a good product, it will sell.
Got it. Do you have a favorite business podcast?
I listen to How We Built This on NPR. It's with I forget his name, but it's great. I would highly recommend giving it a listen.
Describe Mondays for you in one word.
Exciting.
Okay. Who would you love to collaborate with, and what would you love to collaborate on?
I would love to do something with like Mark Cuban. What I would collaborate on, I'm not totally sure, but that would be someone who I would love to do business with. All
right. Do you watch Shark Tank?
I do watch Shark Tank, yes.
Yeah, my favorite show on TV. So
yeah, it's great.
This is Friday, so I'm waiting for the episode. As long as it's new, I'm watching it tonight.
Yeah.
So what one skill or trait do you feel is imperative to be successful?
Communication. 100%.
And last question, what about the future are you most excited about?
Celtics and Bruins could both win a Stanley Cup and NBA championship in the year of 2023, so that's pretty exciting.
Spoken from a true Boston fan. So,
That's
and
right.
I'm the exact opposite. I'm a New York fan. So we're like bitter enemies in that sense. That was awesome. Really well thought out questions, answers. Thank you. So Matt, how can someone reach out to you? And was there any special offer you wanted to offer the listeners of the Raving Patients podcast?
Yeah. So the best way to get in contact with me is just shoot me an email. My email is Matt, MATT at merchantcostconsulting.com. So just like the business name. You can call me if you'd like, 781-234-4570. That's my direct line. Please don't spam me or sell my phone number. But if you'd rather have a conversation, which I am always open to doing so, happy to do that. Or just go to our website, merchantcostconsulting.com. There's actually a link. If you go to our partners page from the homepage, you will see Len. There's a link that you can actually click if you're listening to this podcast. To send over, and we can look at a statement, etc. But those are the 3 ways to get in contact with me. As far as a promo goes, yes, first month free of savings. So if you move forward with us and we achieve you savings, you will get the whole thing versus having to share anything with us. That is a promo if you're listening to this podcast or an associate of Len's.
And they can also go to merchantcostconsulting.com/TAU, I think is the landing page.
Yes,
so
correct.
That's another place you can go to. Great. Guys, I highly recommend as soon as you stop listening to this and get to your office, you reach out to Matt. The worst case is they can't save you any money. And the best case scenario is you save a lot of money. There is really absolutely no risk to trying this out and seeing what they can save you. Look, I bring the best of the best to the podcast. I bring companies that will help you make more money. This product will save you money. I think that's really, really important. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. If you like this episode, please share it. Please tell your colleagues about this service. Review us, like us, do whatever you can to promote the episode. I would really appreciate it. I want to thank the sponsors again, both the doc sites and Dental Intelligence for their support. And don't forget about my meeting, superchargerdentalpractice.com. You can check out more about what we're doing in September 29th and 30th in Delray Beach, Florida. And as always, as you know, I end these podcasts with 2 words I live my life by. Remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, thanks so much. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today.
Len, appreciate it. Thank you.